Good morning. What a truly beautiful morning we have here in Hayes, America, and it's good to see all of you here again this morning. If I could have your attention, please, so that we can get started because our time is limited. We'll follow the same process that we followed on the other news conferences, which is that we'll have our guests say a few words and then leave time for questions from all of you. And again, as I've said before, as a courtesy to everyone else who's here, I have a handheld mic, and we'll ask that when you direct your questions that you use this mic so that everyone can hear the question. So again, it really is an honor for me to introduce a finalist to become the next president of Fort Hays State University, Dr. Michael Droge. And he is currently the president of Park University in Parkville, Missouri. So please welcome Dr. Droge.
Thank you. Guten Morgen. Es freut uns, Sie kennenzulernen. We're not going to do this in German, right? Well, Molly and I are so pleased to be here in Hayes. I want to be sure everyone meets Miss Molly. Please stand, Molly. Dr. Molly Droge, she's a pediatrician. Everyone has been so welcoming, and this is the most fabulous community, and we are so impressed both with the campus and the enthusiasm. I have to tell you, the enthusiasm of the people here is tremendous. I've been asked to share just a little bit about myself, and I know there will be some questions, so we should get after that. I've been working in higher education for 32 years. I know I don't look that old. The first 20 of which were with a public university in Texas, Texas Women's University. Most of those 20 years I was a faculty member in the Department of Biology, where I was also heavily involved in research, and that was great. Toward the end of that 20-year span, though, I became the Dean of Graduate Studies and Research for the university, which also then was very, very heavily involved with the state of Texas on the programming for the university. In 2002, I received a call from the then president of Park University who asked me if I would be interested to apply for the provost position at Park. Now, I had known this president from prior work in Texas, and she also knew that I grew up near Kansas City. Actually, I grew up on a farm south of Kansas City, so that was kind of like coming home. So I fell in love with Park. I moved to Park University in 2002 to be the provost, and then the provost and senior vice president, and I served in that role for 7 years. In 2009, the president retired, and the board asked me to serve first as the interim president, and we did that for several months, and we were busy working on a number of important initiatives. And when it rolled around to the fall, to the October board meeting, the board said, you know, we're just going to drop that interim part, and you're going to be our new president. And that was in 2009, so I've enjoyed being the president there for 5 years now. We're in the second year of a bold new strategic plan for the university. We've really turned the finances around for the university because if you think back to 2009, what was happening in our country with the economy and the recession and all, that was hitting our university as well as it was most places. So that's been a great outcome. And this past year, we also were pleased to have our comprehensive review of the university by the Higher Learning Commission and have a good outcome of a new 10 years of reaccreditation there. So, so Park University is on a solid path, and I'm looking forward to my next great place to serve. And so I'm very pleased to be here in Hayes and to be talking with you about this wonderful institution you have. So maybe I'll stop there and see what questions you have, and please.
Hi, Dr. Droge. Thank you for coming to Hayes. Two questions, actually. What kind of globalization approach do you have in higher education? Because Fort Hays State has a history of working with other countries and all of our globalization processes. And second of all, from your experience, what specific outcomes do you want to see in 20 years if you were to gain the presidency?
Well, those are two big questions. On the first piece with global, I have been very, very involved both recently and actually going back to even my own undergraduate days, because as an undergraduate I was fortunate to spend my junior year abroad in Germany, And then I returned and finished my undergraduate degree, and then was able to have a Fulbright scholarship to spend my first graduate year of study in Germany at the university. And so since that time, that absolutely changed my outlook in my life to understand the importance of having a global perspective and a global experience. So now fast forward to what I've been up to recently. Last several years, 3 years actually, I've been serving on a commission with the American Council on Education in Washington with a group of about 25 presidents. It's a commission they have for internationalization and global engagement initiative, and that's to bring global perspective into the curriculum and into co-curricular programming for American higher education. So the idea is to move beyond adding a study abroad, just adding that on to a student's experience, to building a global understanding, global learning outcomes into the curriculum and into everything that a student would experience during their college life. So it's in the air they breathe and the water they drink, and it becomes just a part of what they know and expect as the 21st century, and that's exactly what it is. So the important part of the education for the 21st century is exactly that. It's a global education. It has to be part and parcel of what you know and expect for your future life. And there are many ways to get to that. Actually, Fort Hays, that's one of the big draws for me for Fort Hays, is that this institution was very smart to be out in front and doing what Fort Hays was doing in China when that began. More recently, China has really become much more restrictive in what they will approve for foreign institutions coming into the country. So Fort Hays was smart in doing that and has been a leader. Now, moving forward, Fort Hays could take elements of that successful model and carry that to other countries. Malaysia would be one good place. There are other places. So, you know, that's an important, and we do that. We use that as well at Park. Park has been very forward-thinking in our internationalization and global work. We have a global institute planned in our strategic planning and a slot for a chief global officer. So, for example, in addition to a student government association, we have a world student union. We have students from over 100 countries. We began the global university chapter system for People to People International. I'm on the board for People to People International. I'll be in Taiwan in September for that board meeting. So I'm very engaged globally. Now, the second question you had was about just overall for the next 20 years or something.
Like, what's
big.
Specific things do you want to see? You know, how do you want to see this university in 20 years, and what specific outcomes do you want to see?
Well, of course, you have a plan called Duty to Dream. And so you've already laid out a number of wonderful initiatives and plans for the future. And this university has great momentum. So the new person coming into this job has to be careful to move that agenda forward, but in a very strategic, careful way, because the world continues to change, right? So you don't want to lose momentum. You can't have someone come in and stop and take a year or two to assess, and then you have other institutions in the world go by you. So it's moving that agenda forward, but being very careful to focus on the quality, because the end game is the quality academics and quality programming for student success, because the university, after all, is about student success. And I know a part of it is growing the enrollment. The plan includes 20,000 students by 2020. There are a number of ways you can do that. I know that includes increasing the enrollment on this campus as well. And there are ways to get there on that front. So a big question. And there's certainly much that any new person would need to learn coming into the institution. Every university is different. Cultures are different. A new person has to listen, ask questions, learn, and work with the team in place. But I tell you, you have a great team in place here.
Hi. What makes Fort Hays more attractive to you than Parks?
Mm-hmm. One great attraction is what I've been looking at and experiencing the past day and a half is this wonderful campus you have. Our campus at Parkville. Park began in 1875 in Parkville, Missouri. It's a wonderful small community. My town I live in is 4,000, so this is a large community to me. And so Parkville University, that campus has maybe 1,200 students. Only 375 live on campus. The campus is about 100 acres. Then we have a large underground. That's another story. So maybe we count that acreage twice, perhaps. But this campus is a wonderful campus in many ways, and clearly you've taken very good care of the campus, so that's a big draw. This residential campus and the experience that would bring, that would include your international work, what's happening in China and what can come from that, and other international work. Fort Hays State is a leader there. Another attraction for me for Fort Hays State is your virtual college and how you were one of the early leaders in the online. That's going to be a critical piece moving forward for all of higher education, both for the way the technology is changing learning, and it's changing learning for the face-to-face as well as the online. And it's some of the same technology that's changing that learning environment both in the classroom as well as online. So that's going to be an exciting future. But Fort Hays, you see, is very well positioned to be the leader there. And there's great opportunities. Fort Hays already is engaged with serving military, some of what you do with the Navy. There are big opportunities in helping veterans. One of the problems, frankly, at Park last several years has been the shrinking military. If you don't know much about Park, I can tell you Park University has 40 face-to-face campus centers in 21 states. 40 face-to-face campus centers. Many of them are on military installations where we have a huge commitment to serve the military. Well, the active duty military has been shrinking. So Park has been very intentionally working to do more and more to better serve the veteran population, because there are currently more veterans seeking education with their benefits than there were even after World War II. That's a huge opportunity and a huge population that deserves to have access and support for their higher education. And quite frankly, many of those people are finding it difficult to have the help and the understanding in navigating their benefits and the help that they should have at many universities. So those schools that can help those individuals understand their benefits and be helpful in them gaining their college education will have many students to serve. And there are other opportunities. Yes.
How is your board elected?
At Park University?
Yes.
With self-perpetuating board, we're a private university, so we have a board of trustees. We have 29 trustees. It's a national board, so they're across the country. About a third of our trustees are alumni.
And funding at Park?
Park's funding is largely tuition-based. So we're largely, most of our funding is based on tuition because we're private, so we don't have state funding in the way that a public institution has funding.
Well, do you have fund drives?
Oh,
and
yes, of course.
Are you participated in those?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. We also, yes, we also have to have that as well.
There are a lot of private, institutions that, you have to raise all that money, struggling right now. What are some of that? Can you talk a little bit about Park University's financial stability? Oh,
Park has a very strong fiscal position, very strong. Over recent years, we've been building our quasi-endowment. We have a regular endowment, and we have been building cash reserves, partly because we knew we were headed toward our strategic planning. We knew we would have some bold initiatives we wanted to fund. So Park has been our financial ratios. All universities have to look at the financial ratios, which are calculations of the money you have and what you owe, and it boils down to ratios. You have them for the higher ed. The Higher Learning Commission has ratios. Banks have ratios. So I can tell you that Park's financial ratios are at the highest possible rating of those ratios that are possible. That's the financial strength of Park.
Who's next?
Yes.
I really don't need a mic. Again, thanks so much for coming to Hays, Kansas.
Absolutely.
Why you? Why should you be the president of Fort Hays State?
Well, I think Fort Hays State would benefit from having someone who has been serving as a president and for a number of years in a successful presidency, has also been serving in the role of a provost and has that understanding of the academic side of an institution. And so you need someone who's going to serve the entirety of the institution and have had the length of experience and the credentials and the academic background to truly understand a higher education institution. And so, we talked about this in a meeting, I think it was one of the meetings this morning, there's been so many meetings, is that you can look forward to a presidency if you're someone who would want to do that, and you can attend conferences and read about it and plan for it, but until you are in that position, and in that position for some period of time, to experience the magnitude of how big that position is and how many people are needing your help, or wanting a piece of your attention, and you learn to manage in that position. There's a big learning curve, is what I'm trying to say, in being a president, and it takes a while and some experience to learn how to be a president and be effective. It takes some time, and so I would think it would benefit Fort Hays State University to have someone who's already had that learning curve, already knows how to be a president, and can hit the ground running. It's a big job, and it's only becoming bigger with everything that's swirling, as we all know, out around with the U.S. Department of Education, the increased regulatory mandates and compliances, and the rest of what's happening in Washington and in Topeka, and on and on. Yes?
Good morning.
Good morning.
You mentioned the rapid pace of change, and related specifically to higher education, what have you changed your mind about in the last 5 years?
The last 5 years has taught me that higher education, both collectively and in individual institutions, have to do a much better job of making the case for the value of higher education. Because quite frankly, higher education has a public relations problem, both with the public and certainly with our lawmakers. And so when you hear about is college even worth it? College graduates can't get jobs. Why higher education? So higher education, collectively, we really have to do a much better job of making the case and helping people understand the value of a higher education. Absolutely, it's about gainful employment. It is not only about gainful employment. We have a globally competitive, knowledge-based economy in a world that is changing, changing faster than ever before. That means that the elements of the liberal education, of critical thinking and communication, problem solving, those are more important than they ever were before. Absolutely, you need professional and technical expertise, but that content has a shelf life, and you have to continue. So lifelong learning, while it used to be a buzzword, is no longer a buzzword. That's very real now. So you absolutely have to make the case for how critical that is, both for us to have an educated citizenry and the kind of workforce that we need for this country, and even for the world, because of how much we have become such a global village now. People must understand that, but each individual institution has to make that case for the individual institution, right? So the institutions have to show why that institution is making a significant contribution to these larger issues facing higher ed in the country. And they are the issues that are at the heart of this new rating system the U.S. Department of Education is developing. And those are access and affordability and completion, attainment, and then it's the earnings. If you look at the Foresight 2020, if you look at what the Kansas Board of Regents has for the attainment and the alignment and the excellence, and then you go back and look at attainment, if you look at the metrics they have, even built into those metrics include the analytical skills, the writing skills, communication skills. What does that tell you? They're even building into the metrics the liberal arts foundation. So what comes around goes around, doesn't it? And what it shows you in the last 5 years is that the liberal arts foundation is more important than ever, and that higher education better be doing a much better job at really making the case for the value around that. And I think we need to change the conversation a little bit to be not so much just about the product, just a product for higher ed, but higher ed as a process. And as a process that goes far beyond a one-time product, but it's a process of learning how to learn for a lifetime of learning. And we could talk for a long time about this. I'm passionate about that. Yes.
Can you talk about your experience in setting up corporate partnerships at various university levels?
Oh, well, we have so many different partnerships at many different levels. One recent one, I'll tell you, with Cerner Corporation, is a large corporation in the Kansas City area, where we said that they needed to help us do more for our veteran students. This goes back to we need to serve veterans. They agreed that they would interview every graduate from our university, every veteran graduate from our university automatically gets an interview at Cerner. And so they've started, because we know that when they interview our students, they're going to love our students. And guess what's happening? They're hiring our veteran students. And Cerner is a highly competitive corporation. It is very tough to even get an interview at Cerner. But the corporate partnerships is such a big bucket. And there, we could talk all day about corporate partnerships. That's many kinds of partnerships. And that can be domestic, and that can be international. So where to begin? I mean, hardly know what next to pick for an example. Public-private, for example, we're working right now with the city of Parkville in an area of land right adjacent to the campus, some of which the university owns, some we don't own, of how we can redevelop the entire area and come up with some wonderful new facilities for the university. And I want an entirely new building for our school business. I think we can get that with other people's money. I mean, and so, it's working with the city, it's working with the local business leaders, and you have to be out there, and partnerships, going back to what I've learned the last 5 years, it's partnership and leveraging strengths on everyone's side to have win-win all the way around. We did that recently with a community college in Barstow, California, remote area of California, where they didn't have a senior college nearby. And they asked, couldn't we please be on their campus and help them, which we did, added a campus center last year, and it was a tremendous success. We're now using part of that model. Next fall, we're opening another campus center on another community college campus that's much larger. We're expanding our campus center, one in Texas, adding an off-post facility where we can bring additional graduate programming. So you really have to be very innovative. Institutions like this need to always preserve this heart and soul that is this campus. It's always the core of the institution. But institutions have to be innovative and add, enrich onto that. And so that's where the partnerships, and that's partnerships here in Hayes, and it's partnerships beyond Hayes.
Let's go beyond that. What about international partnerships? What if any, have you been involved in?
Mm-hmm. Big topic. A number of years ago, I traveled to Taipei, Taiwan, and visited someone I knew at Ming Chuang University. Actually, I knew the president there is big with People to People International, and we talked about People to People International. We formed a partnership with Ming Chuang because they have an international college. And in their international college, all of the courses are taught in English. Well, that was helpful for us because our students and faculty could go back and forth, and you can have this experience without having to learn Mandarin to go have the exchange. So we've had a long-standing partnership with Ming Chuang in that exchange program. We're also now working with Taipei Medical University in Taipei because they have a master's program in healthcare leadership, as we do. So they want to have a dual degree program. Now, that's not set up yet, but that's what they're wanting to work with us. So I've traveled and visited with the people there, and in fact became a visiting distinguished professorship I hold now at the Taipei Medical University because my PhD is in physiology and biophysics. So my own research background is in neuroscience. So that played well in the biomedical. I've also been to visit in mainland China at Beijing Normal University. I visited China, and we started programs with partner universities to our campus in Parkville, where they would be in residence for a year, teach Mandarin. They would return, and then we would have these contacts at these universities to help us with the exchange and the programs and the students and faculty at the other universities. So then when we visit like Beijing Normal and visit our friends there, it's very helpful. We've done the same thing with some faculty members who've been on our campus from Shanghai, and so we're doing more and more. Actually, our Associate Vice President of Strategic Enrollment Management, who is an American, speaks Mandarin. His wife is from Taiwan, and so he travels each year throughout China, and so he's visiting high schools as well as universities, and he started quite a pipeline. And so our population on campus with Chinese students has grown quite substantially, but we have over we have international students from over 100 countries, and right now it's between 650, 700 international students. Do you know, one of our rankings we were proud of is that we were the second most international university in the Midwest. Well, do you know who the #1 is? You don't get 3 guesses. Fort Hays.
We have time, I think, for a couple more questions, so I'm going to take one of them.
Oh, yes, sir.
A lot of folks here at Fort Hays State, I think, are hoping that a new presidency will mean an opportunity for new resources to do great things in their areas. How does a new president say no?
Very strategically. But a new president has to say no. I mean, you can't do all things. You can't fund all things, and you have to have a plan, which is why you would go back to the plan you have in place. I mean, you would start with the plan you have, the momentum you have, and keep the momentum going, but you would really have to work with the team you have in place in that duty to dream. I would want to really flesh out what is in the duty to dream, what are the tactics and the strategies around, because you may be very much further along with some of that than I see in the documents that I have. The 3 institutes that are contemplated, for example, and the enrollment plans for the numbers of students here and there of various kinds. You know, what's behind all of that for the tactics and how to get there. The strategic planning that we've done, we have our 5 strategic priorities. Then they have a limited set of strategic results, and those result statements for each priority is how much are you going to accomplish by when. So it's their metrics. And there's timelines. Now you can adjust those as the world changes, but you have to have your plan. And so the saying no part is being very clear, and it's prioritizing. And it has to be tied to the budget, because I can look at your budget and I can tell you what your university's priorities are. You know, your budget is what your priorities are. So that has to be tight.
Thank you.
It's pretty
Last question.
Not a great subject to talk about, but there is politics involved in the office of presidency here or in Park, and that's politics before our Board of Regents, political aspects of that, and how is that played in Park with relation to your board and the general public?
Well, let me tell you, there are politics in all things, and the politics begin internally. So it's politics with faculty, staff, even student government, everything and everyone. So don't ever overlook any of the politics. And certainly that is with the president, with the board of trustees or the regents. You have to be very close to those individuals about what's happening and what the expectations are and your plan for getting there. I think I might want to add, and I'll get to your question, that I think if you look at my record and you talk to people, one of the real successes I've had has been in the area of the shared governance and bringing people along in the organization to have everyone pulling in the same direction. I really think that leadership is absolutely about bringing people together around a shared vision and helping other people succeed. That doesn't happen if you've got the politics not all working against one another. So now let me tell you, even though Park is a private institution, it might surprise you for me to tell you that I've always had not only a local agenda for the community, but a state legislative agenda and a national agenda. I have an associate VP for government relations. I have an entire subdivision of university advancement that's constituent relations. So we set up quite a series of external advisory committees with the university, with civic and business leaders that are very closely connected with the university in advisory capacity. And that's been tremendous. Also, we've used a civic advisory council, which is our top advisory group, right under our board of trustees. It's actually become somewhat of a farm team. So people who don't really know the university, but they are powerhouses both in their influence and their capacity to help the university, but they don't really know Park yet, we pull them into our civic advisory council. Gives them a chance to learn about the university, we learn about them, they fall in love with us, boom, they're in our candidate pool to pull onto our governing board of trustees. In the city of Kansas City, well, Park University is halfway between the downtown airport between the airport and the downtown Kansas City. So we kind of straddle Clay County, Platte County. So I'm engaged with both the economic development councils for both of those counties. There's a Northland Regional Council. I'm a board member of the Downtown Council. And another initiative that I'm very proud that I was a part of and actually helped set up was with the Kansas City Area, KCADC, the Kansas City Area Development Council, which governs 18 counties around Kansas City. Bob Marcus is the head of that. And I worked with Bob to set up a higher education task force. The idea behind that task force was to bring leadership of all of the colleges and the universities for the entire 18 counties. That went out to KU and K-State included, to come together about every 6 weeks. We did this for 2 years for how could we have whatever programs at whatever universities were needed to speak to prospective companies that were looking at Kansas City to come in to make the move to Kansas City maybe instead of Dallas or Chicago, so that Kansas City could be out-competing these other markets and showing them that we had the higher ed to speak to their workforce needs, and that we could be the Johnny on the spot, and we would be the city where the higher ed was playing nice in the sandbox and collaborating. So we did that, and we also set up a common web page for all of the higher ed in that 18-county region. And through that, I was able to work with the presidents of all those universities. So I co-chaired that with Terry Calloway, who's the president of Johnson County Community College, and Terry retired this last year, but he's a great fellow, and we made a lot of great progress also working for the city. In 2 weeks, I'm going to be on the delegation with the Greater Kansas City Chamber of Commerce for their visit to Washington, D.C. To the Hill. So that's about the legislative agenda. That's the city's legislative agenda. I have my own legislative agenda, so I'll do their part, and then I'll split off. But no, I do that. That's the legislative piece. But I'm also very closely involved with the American Council on Education in Washington. So I'm frequently there because you have to be at the table. And that's part of this piece I mentioned earlier about advocating for this value of higher ed. ACE is wonderful, but they're not the only organization. There are others I'm involved with. So being at the table in your community, in your state, and beyond.
Thank you, Dr. Droge. Thank all
you.
of you for coming.
Thank you.